Following violent protests, demonstrators blame the government for last week's catastrophic warehouse explosions.
Excuse me? Councilmember Tricky, did you have something?
Okay, Mr. Tariki, did you try calling my office phone and then it went to voicemail? And then Mr. Boyette, did you call my cell phone or my office phone? So it sounds like we are. Office. Okay, so it sounds like we are having issues when they try calling the office phone.
Okay, we'll try to address those. Welcome, everyone. We are having some technical challenges this evening, so please bear with us. We'll appreciate that. We're having some issues when it comes to public, your ability to call in for public comment tonight. That number, when we get to that part of our meeting, will be 237-6196. And we'll give you a little clearer instructions when we get to closer to that time as to the status of our ability to take those calls. And we may have some special arrangements we need you to follow tonight. But it'll be a little while before we get to that, and we can discuss it further at that time. If you would all, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by our invocation by Councilmember Ewald. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilmember Ewald.
Christ Jesus, when we talk to you, we seem to always be asking for something. Even during these trying times, there are rays of sunshine. This evening, I ask that we reflect on some of the things we are thankful for. Our families and friends, food, shelter, and clothing, the United States of America, and the dedicated men and women who work and sacrifice to keep it free. Freedom of religion, speech, and peaceful assembly. For Montana, a land with unending natural resources and opportunities. The great city of Billings, the place we call home. The responsibility to do our best every day to appreciate and respect what you have given us. In your name, we thank you. Amen.
Thank you. I believe Chris, our clerk, is in transport, right? She's moving to where she can get to a better location to possibly have fewer technical problems. I'll call the roll unless that's not the case and we have a clerk with us tonight.
Please do, Mayor. You nailed it exactly. So our deputy clerk is on their way into City Hall because of technical difficulties this afternoon. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Then roll call. Councilmember Shaw.
Here.
Yakowicz.
Present.
Neese.
Here.
Ewald.
Here.
Joy.
Present.
Tricky.
I am present.
Currington. Councilmember Parrington, are you with us?
Yes, I am present.
Okay. Councilmember Ronning.
Here.
Boyette.
Here.
And Brown.
Here.
Thank you very much. First item up is our minutes from our July 27, 2020 meeting. Is there any questions, changes, or motion pertaining to the July 27 minutes? Councilmember Yakowicz.
Your Honor, I make a motion to approve.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Parrington, second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, which is for approval of the minutes, July 27, please raise your hand. Motion passes. I'm seeing a vote. Councilmember Neese, I'm not seeing your screen. Do we still have Councilmember Neese? We might have lost Councilmember Neese. We will.
See him on the participant list.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Trickey, did you say he is not on the participants list?
He is not currently on the participant list, yeah.
Okay. There, I see Councilmember Neese, at least your screensaver there. Councilmember Neese, are you with us? Yay. All right. And so everyone else had voted in favor of the approval of the minutes. Councilmember Neese, did you have a vote on the minutes?
Yes. Yes, I do. I approve.
Okay, thank you very much. The motion passes unanimously then. We have no, or do we have any council courtesies this evening? Seeing none, we do not have any proclamations. Do we have any council member Ewald?
Thank you, Mayor. This isn't in Ward 2's area, but I was on First Avenue South today, and I drove by that new coffee shop on First Avenue South, and wow, that really makes First Avenue South look a whole lot better. And I've been noticing a lot of new improvements on First Avenue South, so it's looking better, really good.
Thank you for that heads up. I believe, is that called the filling station across from CLDI? No. What does anybody know the name of the shop?
Rail Line. I believe it's the Rail Line coffee shop.
The Rail Line, right. And still across from CLDI, a great facility. Councilmember Ronnie?
Mayor, called the filling station's a bar in Bozeman.
Okay, well, either way, you go to get something to drink. So I knew I'd heard that before, but thanks for telling the rest of the world where I had heard it. Okay, let's forget that ever happened. Any other council courtesies or not? Okay, no proclamations. Any council reports? Councilmember Purington?
Well, I'm just going to say this as a courtesy. There's a new group in Billings, Billings Back the Blue, and they had a nice little rally on Sunday, and they had a nice crowd. It was good. Got a lot of horn hawks, so that was good.
Thank you very much. Are there any council reports? Councilmember Neese.
Sorry, actually, this is back to council courtesies. I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that we will be having our public safety mill levy up in educational information at the Castle Rock Park outside the splash pad. If someone's wondering where that is, in the Castle Rock Park on Thursday at 7 p.m.
Thank you very much. There will be a series of those public safety mill levy presentations at parks around the city. Perhaps, Chris Kukulski, you could touch on that when we get to your report about how people can find the schedule, the times, kind of a little bit about the content. Those are very important. Thank you very much for calling that to our attention. I'm not seeing any other hands up, so I'm assuming Councilmember Purington.
I just had a question for Roy. Is it tomorrow at noon that they're having the Castle Rock Master Plan presentation? And is that via Zoom or do you have to be there?
It's via Zoom. That's correct. If you go to the Heights Task Force webpage, you'll be able to see the information and link there.
Perfect. Thank you.
The Facebook page.
Thank you very much. All right. If there's nothing further, we'll move on to our city administrator reports. I'll also just remind anybody who might be listening that a copy of our agenda tonight is always available on the city's website, as well as information on how to access this proceeding on Community 7 TV, on Facebook, and on YouTube. The latter being particularly important if Community 7 is not carrying us live, which does happen typically once a month when Community 7 is carrying the school board. So for information, go to that cover page on our agenda for more information. Chris Kukulski, City Administrator, do you have anything further to report?
Yes, Mayor and Council, thank you. So first of all, as you're well aware, we're just 5 weeks away from ballots being due. So just as a reminder, Tuesday, September 15th is election day for the city mail-in ballot, city question only. Those ballots will go out in the mail August 28th, start showing up in mailboxes on Saturday the 29th, and hopefully everyone else in town who didn't get it on Saturday the 29th will have it no later than Monday the 31st. They must be in the office, not postmarked, but in the office, election office, by Tuesday, September 15th. You mentioned it, and I just went to verify. So if people will continually be drawn to billingsmt.gov, if you want to go straight to it, billingsmt.gov/PS 2020, you can do that, or you go to our website. There is a calendar there. I just confirmed, just used it just to double check. That calendar, it's got a blue, the date where there's any meetings is in blue. You double click on that, it'll tell you where that meeting is and what time. We'll work on seeing if we can be even a little bit more specific as to where in the park. Bottom line is we need electricity. So for the sound system. So wherever that park has got access to power, that's where we're going to be in the park. And those are getting scheduled out to a park near you, especially in light of COVID-19. We thought that would be a way that we can be both social distance, safe, and be outdoors. So those are happening in each of your wards, in some cases, a couple of them in your ward. So a change we did make this afternoon was, since South Park Task Force is doing theirs at South Park, then we were going to be meeting a week later also in South Park. Today I asked Winnette to put that at North Park. So we can have one, the two in Ward 1 will be at North Park, one will be at South Park. If people want more because we got a great turnout or for whatever reason, we will gladly do more. So those are going out strong and the presentations are taking place. And we continually update that website. So I think we got a good Q&A, questions and answers added Friday. We made some changes to it Saturday. So as we get better information, we're continually updating that website. Also, you should start seeing ads on social media guiding people to the website for information. I think that's all I'll say about the public safety mill levy, unless anyone has any questions about the public safety mill levy. So with that, then the other piece I would touch on is we've been diligently also working on prep for the 2021 legislature. Part of the challenge, though, is everything continues to get delayed and postponed. So I was on the phone this afternoon with our lobbying team, Amy Gramales from Crowley Fleck. We've got some important meetings coming up August 24th and 25th. Legislative Council meeting. Some of the others have been postponed into September, but we plan on having a conversation with you next Monday about the draft legislative agenda. I think there's a Infrastructure Coalition meeting tomorrow, and I'll be talking with Tim Burton about what the league is kind of putting together. So it's starting to come together a little slower than any of us would like, and yet at the same time, there's just this reality of how are things going to shift and change because of COVID-19. But those are really the two hot issues on my plate. First and foremost, we've got to get this levy education campaign continued and cross the finish line. And we've got work preparing for that 2021 legislature. So with that, I'll end my administrative report, and hopefully any minute now, Tony will be able to jump on because she will be at City Hall and operating. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions for Chris before we move on to the consent agenda. Councilmember Purington.
Thank you, Chris. Are local legislators not a part of this discussion, or is it just the lobbyist?
So for next Monday night for the work session?
Well, not for us. I thought you said that you were going to be meeting with Amy and some of these others.
So I'm sorry. We had a phone conference this afternoon, just conversation in preparation for. So that conference was, or that meeting was just a phone call between myself and Amy as we prepare for our discussion next week with you and going forward. Part of the dialogue has been putting Zoom calls together for legislative candidates for us to build those relationships. That's part of what we'll be doing between now and then. Any of our conversations with you, of course, are public, and they're welcome to participate. And it's just been a little bit more challenging with Zoom versus breakfast, other things we would have ordinarily done.
So I'm understanding then that you don't really coordinate with the local legislators.
Well, no, we do, and we want to. We want to build relationships with them. We want you to build relationships with them. We want us to build relationships with them. And part of the 11 of you is defining what is our legislative agenda so that they can have the benefit of knowing where's the city going to be coming from. And that should be guided by their advice to us as well, what they see as legislators.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next item up would normally be public comment on non-public hearing items, which tonight is item number 1, our consent agenda, item number 2, and item number 3. In other words, everything on our agenda. Because until our clerk arrives and can receive those phone calls, I would suggest that we delay that public hearing. Go ahead and start our discussion of the consent agenda. Probably not take any action on the consent agenda until we revisit whether we can receive public comment. Delay our discussion until we've had that public comment before taking any sort of action. Is that procedure acceptable if we go ahead and move on with our consent agenda? Have a little discussion, see what the issues are. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm agreeable as long as we don't look at doing any separations until after public comment.
Okay. We can at least start with questions or general comments, I guess. And even if we were to take separations, we could always come back to that, I suppose, after we've had public comment. So are there questions? Go ahead and look down your consent agenda and whether we got questions for staff or other introductory comments. Councilmember Purington and Councilmember Yakovich.
I had some questions regarding 1C, the professional service contract. Chris had addressed some of them, but I also had some questions on various pages there was on page 11, there was something about a 60-40 split of time. And I think that was police officers. And so some of it had to do with community policing, I believe. And so I was wondering how, and I don't know, the chief would probably be able to answer this the best, or Kevin, about how would that affect their current training that they do at the academy?
Do we have the chief on, or Chris, whoever is best able to answer that question?
So is the question, how would, and I'm trying to pull up page 11, right?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. I just have a note that 60-40 split of time. How would this affect the training of police officers? And I think it had to do with community policing, if I can remember right, Chief.
I'm not familiar with the document. I'd have to defer to Kevin. Looks like he's up.
Yeah, Councilmember Purington, I think what it's referring to is 60% of your entire police department, your sworn staff, should be devoted to patrol, and then the other 50% is the support side of it. So as far as the training, I don't think that would become an issue. And Chief can certainly comment on kind of where we're at with that current split, because he's dealt with similar things in the past. So.
Okay.
Councilmember Purinton, I mean, I can speak from the past and current discussions here in Billings. One of the things when we get into this analysis, I'll be looking to understand is what's the percentage, and it's never going to be perfect, but on average, what's the percentage of time that our officers are allowed to do or have the availability to do proactive police work versus reactive responding to 911 calls for service. And that ratio is important because it, just as it sounds, we want officers to be able to build relationships, be proactive, be doing crime prevention and community policing and building relationships, not just responding to calls for service.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. You know, while we're on item 1C, the professional services contract, we'll go to Councilmember Yakwich and Councilmember Neese, but are there any other questions while we have the chief up? And people might have it in front of them about 1C. And I guess one question I had, Chief, is the document, which is very, very detailed. It's a pretty impressive proposal. Does not specifically mention recruitment issues involving minority officers. We know that that's an important goal that you and your administrators have been working on. But in today's environment, can we expect that issue will be specifically addressed in their report?
Well, I assume so. As specific as the things that they were going to look at, it would include our recruiting, our hiring and retention, and probably some sort of succession planning as well. That would all fit in together, and I'd be real interested to hear what their assessment is about our efforts, because we do make a significant effort to throw that net wide and far.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope it does. I believe we have the most diverse police force in the state of Montana, but that doesn't mean that we necessarily are fully reflective of the community. So important to continue to work on that. Appreciate your efforts there. Other comments or questions about item 1C, Councilmember Ronning.
Thank you. And just to share with that also, because one of the issues in this Center for Public Management study is a survey that goes out to the public on the public's perception of policing. And one of the things we talked about with Chief St. John recently was, and Kevin Ifland, Assistant City Administrator Kevin Ifland, is working with that group to make sure that, just like what Mayor Cole said, that the respondents to the survey are truly reflective of the community, and that a wide variety of diversity of the public responds to that survey, to make sure that we have a number of people of color that are responding to the survey as well, and working our hardest to get the survey out to a very diverse population in Billings so that it does reflect accurately on the community. So that was one of the things we had talked about earlier with the chief and Kevin on this. So yeah, just wanted to share that. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else before we go to Councilmember Yakwich on that item? We can come back to it too if council members would prefer. But Councilmember Yakwich and then Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Honor and Council. I'd like to give Chief St. John an opportunity to talk on item 1E, Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Billings and Billings Public Schools and Billings Catholic Schools for School Resource Officer Program.
Chief.
May he speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council Member, for the opportunity. Last year, there was quite a bit of discussion from Council, essentially on how much the city was paying versus the school district and the Catholic school system. Currently, we're picking up about 58% of 8 SROs, and there's different formulas on what that looks like. Had conversation with Mr. Ripplin, did go back and do some negotiating with the superintendent. Then COVID hits. And what happens is that the school resource officers have nothing to do in the schools, and they are now police officers working for us for the end of the school year and all summer. And the school board asked the same question of the superintendent, as did you of me. They are paying for SROs that they're not getting. So the superintendent and I agreed that this year we would call it a wash. And next year, the contract will include a 50-50 cost sharing, plus the 3 officers that they pick up 100%. So essentially what that will do is if we negotiate it at a 10-year officer rather than entry level, that would put us paying about 37%. We'll just flip that around from where we're at right now. If we're at a entry level officer, it would be down to probably around 55%. So again, it's a great partnership, but it evens up the amount that we're paying in. So I just wanted to explain that as we move forward, because I knew that there were a lot of questions last year. And I think that what the superintendent and I have come up with is very workable and amicable going into the next contract. Just wanted to explain that for everybody. Thank you, council member.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. I recognize Councilmember Neese first. Councilmember Neese and Councilmember Ewald. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to ask Chief too, if you wouldn't mind talking regarding item number I, regarding the donation for the body cameras. There, I see in your memo, there's another 131,000 that will need to be obtained to, I guess, finish the program. Can you explain, first of all, if this is something that you as a police and the police officers are really wanting to do, and is this how will we get the $131,000? Is that in this year's budget already?
Thank you, council member. First, I want to recognize Phillips 66. They have been outstanding partners for the police department for many years. They've donated to our K-9 program, to our firearms program, to K-9s, and now the body camera program. Some of you are here for a presentation I did on the program a while back, and we are not opposed to it any way, shape, or form. Matter of fact, we have them in play right now on units that are specialized and units that are away from their car. So the school resource officers, our K-9s, our street crimes unit, all of those have body cameras in place. This will allow us to move forward with the program to get the hardware to work on the server, on the storage issue, which is the thing that's very expensive. When I presented this before, we were looking at about $800,000 every 5 years for server and storage. Since that time, the plan that we have is reduce the number of cameras because we're able to interface with the existing system in our car. So originally we were looking at 95, now we're down to 70, 75. One camera for 2 officers essentially. And then of course technology has improved. So we'll work that down. And so that's what we did. Like I called it, is seed money, just to continue with the program, build the framework. But certainly in today's day and age with the national discussion on accountability, there's nothing wrong with body cameras. We have some. We have all in our cars, so we don't oppose that at all. Did I answer your question, council member?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ewald, and then Councilmember Ronning.
Thank you, Mayor. I see Tony's back on, or Tony Keener, so we should probably go back to public comment and follow the order.
Yeah, Tony, can you confirm that you're ready if we do open up for public comment, or do you need a little more time to get ready?
I am ready, but our public comment line is down at City Hall. It is not working. So what we can do is allow people to call in to the city clerk phone number, which is 657-8210.
Okay, Tony, will there be a queue there?
There will not be a queue.
Okay, so we'll just have, if somebody calls that number and someone is already on the number, will they hear a busy tone or will it just ring, or what will they hear? Do you know?
I do not know.
Okay, well, we'll ask them.
Okay. Sorry.
With that, okay, we'll do our best. That's all we can do. Council members, it doesn't sound like this is a problem that's going to be easily fixed if we just wait a little bit. So I would suggest we go to public comment. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that we only have one public comment period, except for at the very end, we'll have another public comment on non-agenda items. But unless there are questions for Tony or comments, I will open it up for public comment at this time. Council members, is there anything we need to discuss before I do that? Council member Tricky.
I would guess that if the line is busy, they will probably get directed to voicemail.
Probably so. I will remind callers then, if that happens, that they should just try again and keep trying until they get through. I'll warn council members, there's a possibility that it may be a little, when I close it, we may still get a straggler, in which case I would suggest we reopen the public comment because of the technical problems. Chris Kukulski, what would you like to say?
I was just going to say my cell number is on my business card. So maybe folks, if they're hung up waiting in a queue, they can text me and then I can know we've got people waiting. So that number is 581-7026, 581-7026. So if someone calls in and they get bumped to the voicemail, I'd ask them to text me so that I can know and Tony and I can communicate to try to let people know when they can get in. So we'll just do our best to make sure people have an opportunity to be heard.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for making that available. Any other comments before I open it up for public comment?
We're having issues.
If not, then just a recap, this is the opportunity for public comment on all items on our agenda. The consent agenda, which is item 1, and any of the sub-items under that. And then item number 2, which is a resolution vacating alley right-of-way in Luray subdivision. And number 3, the purchase agreement with Elmer Fox Estate for about 20 acres for the Billings Operation Center off South Billings Boulevard. That's what's on our agenda tonight. If you would like to be heard on any of those items, call the clerk's phone number tonight, which is 657-8210. That number again, 657-8210. And Tony Keener, our city clerk, will receive your phone call and patch you through so that we can get your comment. You may not, please turn off your television or whatever you're listening to the meeting, because there is a delay between the actual meeting, which is ahead of what you're hearing, and it'll be very confusing for you and for us. That number again, 657-8210. If it goes to voicemail or you hear a busy number, please keep calling. You can also text or call our city administrator at 581-7026, preferably text, so he knows you're out there trying to get through. Tony, do we have any phone calls to your number, 657-8210?
I have not received any phone calls yet.
Okay, thank you. We'll delay a little bit because of the delay and also our technical challenges here. That number again, 657-8210 for Tony's office, and Chris Kukulski's cell phone number. If you have a technical problem, please text him or call 581-7026. Again, Tony, the main number, 657-8210. Tony, do we have any callers to 657-8210?
I have not received any phone calls.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope our technical challenges haven't discouraged input tonight. People at least have that opportunity. We'll delay just again a few more seconds, 657-8210. Before I gavel public comment closed, Councilmember Neese.
Mayor, can we confirm, do we have Channel 7 on participating to actually broadcast this meeting?
I see Tim Harrington name on. Can either Tim or Tony confirm Channel 7's presence?
Kevin Ifland is hosting right now, but they did log in first thing tonight when I opened the meeting.
And I can see them on, I had gotten a
yes. I have Tim Harrington.
I think
yes.
I normally see Community 7. I didn't see that in the participant list, but okay, if he's representing them, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for checking. I will, Tony, assuming we have nobody who's called that number, I will close our public comment period. Thank you very much. And we will go back to our consent agenda, and we'll go ahead and ask for separations from members of the council for a separate vote. Are there any separations on the consent agenda? Any separations? Okay, if Councilmember Parrington?
I paused. Can I make a motion?
Please.
I move to approve the items of the consent agenda as submitted with the exception, well, there weren't any exceptions. Oh, Penny's there.
Councilmember Parrington, I think Councilmember Ronning, do you have a separation? You're muted. There you go.
Thanks. I wasn't going to do a separation, but were we going to continue with questions, or did you want to do that after the motion?
We'll definitely have.
I have my hand raised, but never got to ask it.
No, absolutely. No, we will. We'll have full discussion on the motion, and there'll be opportunity for further questions.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Councilmember Parrington. Would you like to complete your motion?
Well, I think there was no exception, so I think I could have stopped it as submitted.
Okay. So the motion is for approval as submitted. Councilmember Neese is holding up two fingers. So Councilmember Neese has seconded the motion. Now discussion, Councilmember Ronning.
Thank you. And this is for Chief St. John again. So thank you so much, Chief. And you and I have had great discussions before on the body camera program. And I just wanted to clarify that Phillips 66 doesn't need to be the only donor, that the city will accept donations from other groups as well. Because I know that there are many groups that are out there that feel very strongly about body cameras, and this gives them an opportunity to raise money if they would like to see this program put into place in Billings. So does the city have a way to collect donations from regular citizens as well, or other nonprofit organizations for this specific program?
Council member for asking. Yes, we take donations on a wide variety of things, anywhere from what's just general, use it how you want, to things that are specific. And a donor can specifically direct funds to a program or a project. Our canine is a prime example of that. We get a lot of donated funds that are specific to purchasing a canine or supporting the program, and the same can go true for a body camera program. So we certainly take donations, and the more the merrier, and it will certainly help us along.
Thank you. And then how do they go about doing that? Do they contact the police department directly, or city clerk's office, or how do they go about doing that?
Well, it's as simple as writing a check to the police department, and then we have our internal processes, put it in a donation account. If it's specified for a single item, then that is a standalone account. And then, then we have full accounting for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief. And just a reminder to our citizens that donations to the City of Billings or any government entity by law are fully tax deductible, just as though they were making a contribution to a 501c3 entity. And when the government writes those rules, they made sure to include that for kind of obvious reasons, I guess. Other questions or comments? Councilmember Ewell and Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief St. John, In that one on, let's see, 1I, the donation, it's stated in there that it costs $131,000 a year, but that doesn't include the storage cost, right?
That's correct.
So what would the total cost of running this program be per year?
I have those from the previous presentation. We were looking in the area of about $163,000 for data storage for 1 year. The hardware itself isn't very expensive, and we can get that set up. It's a server. So 163, and this was a few years ago. Or if you wait and do it every 5 years, then you are $15,000 for the server, and the storage is $800,000. And there are, again, some technological advances since we did this before. I'm sure that there'll be some different specifics when we dig into this a little bit further. But you're absolutely right. The storage and the server is the issue that we have to deal with.
And that would follow up, Mayor, please.
Go ahead.
That would be in addition to the $131,000 a year that's stated in this.
Yeah, that's correct. The 131 will get us the hardware, and then our server and storage issues we want to deal with later, and that potentially could be handled through the technical replacement program if we start putting money into that and hopefully build up something. So again, a lot of discussion. Finances apart, we've got a lot of policies that we need to hammer out and work with legal. You're talking about a pretty controversial piece of equipment. When you go into somebody's house and you're filming everything. So those are things that we'd have to work with, but equipment is what we need to get going with.
One more follow-up, please, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. What's the chances with all this stuff going on and everybody wants to know what actually happens? What's the chances of getting a grant to take care of this for like 10 years?
Well, certainly there's grants that are out there. Primarily it's for personnel and programs, not so much for equipment, but we always have our eye open for opportunities. And Phillips 66 is a prime example. They're looking for a public safety project, and we jumped on that right away, and they were kind enough. So we're always looking for things to support that.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, why on earth does it cost so much to park a lot of data in a box? It shows you my technical savvy.
Mayor, and I'm right there with you. I would have to defer to our IT specialist, but you're talking about video and audio, and we do that right now with our the WatchGuard equipment in our cars. And the program that we're looking at, we do have a prototype ready to go. Mr. Iflin saw our new vehicle, which is already set up to handle a body camera system. But what happens is that dumps remotely into a server, and then if we have no need for it, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing controversial, nothing for evidence, nothing for lawsuits, we keep it for 30 days. And then we will purge that. Well, if you can imagine, that we have, 95 patrol officers, 24/7, 365, all running their cameras on everything they do, it's going to fill up very quickly. And so in order to handle that, that's why you have the big cost on the server. The one thing I'm told, which would be a great solution, would be a cloud option. However, something in Billings here, internet-wise, doesn't support the size of the cloud or whatever we need to do that. So again, those are all things that we're going to be researching and exploring.
Okay, thank you. We'll all learn together, I guess. Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I wondered if Mr. Brooks would like to comment on what impact cameras might have on his office in terms of the editing and freedom of information requests that come forward. Thank you.
Your Honor and Councilwoman Joy, that's an excellent question. Usually any evidence that's generated, we do have an obligation by case law and statute to preserve. And so Chief St. John is correct. If there is a need, in other words, a charge is filed or there's a threat of civil litigation against the police department, we do need to preserve that. And the other thing that we have to keep in mind is that if there is an active case, we do have a unilateral obligation to provide any audio or video to defense counsel as part of what we call the discovery. So certainly the storage part doesn't impact our office, but certainly keeping track of the cases and the evidence that goes with those cases, primarily video and audio that we're talking about right now, does impact our office.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Yakowicz and Councilmember Neese. Councilmember Yakowicz, you're muted.
Chief, since you're on here with Project Safe Neighborhood Researchers, could you just touch on that a little bit and how does that impact our neighborhood?
Thank you, Council Member. Project Safe Neighborhood, of course, is our partnership with local, state, and federal. And we are basically going after the worst of the worst here, violent crime, and those specifically that are involved in drugs, using firearms to commit assaults, robberies, or whatnot. And so part of that money has been dedicated to do the research portion of our case investigation. So what we're trying to do, and it ties directly into our Yellowstone Substance Abuse Connect, is we're trying to draw correlations on the front end of who may be likely to commit these crimes and what are the common denominator, what are the things that are causing issues. So you're looking at, when did they first get arrested? How many are domestic abuse victims? How many are arrested for alcohol, marijuana? And trying to draw a picture of what it is an offender looks like so we can intervene on the front end. And so it's just very helpful to help guide our enforcement efforts.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Neese, you had your hand up?
I did. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. This question actually is regarding item F, and I don't know if it's Tracy Scott on or Kevin, if you want to answer my question. I didn't see in the memo that it indicated this was already a budgetary item, so it looks like a little over $13,000 will be used out of the parking division. Is that covered in the budget that was approved? And then I also noticed, again, the second question can be addressed, is that you're charging $250 an hour to help defer the operating costs. Does that mean these are operating at a loss?
Your Honor and Councilmen, good evening. This is this grant. We are receiving $25,500 to cover 3 dual charging stations. The total, there's different options. There's option 1, 2, and 3. It's dependent on the type of charging station. I'm very new to electric cars. I don't know a lot about it. I have been relying on a couple of local citizens that own Teslas. This grant money became available. I was encouraged to pursue it. And there, of course, was a deadline to get that done. The total amount that we would end up having to pay for the installation, for the first option, it would be $4,100. For the second option, it would be just about $5,000. And for the third option, it would be about $8,000. There is a 5-year comprehensive warranty on that, so we don't anticipate any maintenance costs. There will be electrical charges. We took a look at what Red Lodge ends up paying a month. It's about $52 for 4 charging stations. And so we anticipate that doubling the amount of money for those charging stations, one, it'll help to defer costs, and two, it's going to help to keep people from parking in those locations. We will be enforcing those spots, but if people have to pay double the price, hopefully they will decide they do not want to park there. There are charging stations, I understand, and I believe the mayor has an electric car, so maybe he can help provide some information as well. But we don't really have any options in the downtown area, nor do we have any in the hospital area. And those are two locations where we have seen Teslas and certain electric vehicles parking.
Okay, and Mayor Cook, follow up.
Go ahead.
Because my question was if the 250 is actually paying for the cost of the electricity or is not, and then was this in the budget for 2021?
No, Councilman, this was not in the budget. It just, it came up and I was asked to jump on it since the grant money was available.
I see Chris has something to say.
City Administrator Kukulski.
So our goal here is not to subsidize electric cars. So it's to understand what the market price is, make sure we're covering our cost. And actually, if the market is better than that, I mean, I'm speculating too, that there may be somewhat of a reasonable premium an individual's willing to pay to charge their car while they're parked. So we want to kind of hit that sweet spot. We don't want to subsidize it, and we want to make sure they're used by electric users. So the idea is not to never have them used, but not have me park there with my gas car or you, but an electric car user use them, charge them, pay all of our costs plus some for our long-term maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't have much to add there. I don't have an electric car, but my daughter does. And so I know how critical charging stations are to that infrastructure and to the use of electric cars, which are the future. I mean, every major manufacturer is heading in that direction, even for large trucks. So Bozeman, other communities are way ahead of Billings. I know that on that charging infrastructure. It's hard for travelers to come to our community if they don't have a place to charge your vehicle. Imagine a community where you don't have a gas station. You'll make sure not to stop there. But my understanding is that these are basically cost neutral to the community or close to it. There are private companies that you buy a credit card essentially, and you run it through the machine and it charges your account. Councilmember Ewald.
Thank you, Mayor. Do these electric cars, do they pay some form of road tax like the gas tax everybody else pays?
Not really. Or not at all. That's a whole different issue, of course. And the federal government is talking about implementing something like that because you say that the gas tax is a gas tax.
So follow up, Mayor?
Sure.
So the city's actually losing out on that gas tax by having these electric cars. So maybe we should be charging more for the electricity. So at least we get something in return. Because they're just, how are we supposed to get the inner belt loop built? The more electric cars come, the less we get to build the inner belt loop. So
at some point, that may be an issue worth discussing. Councilmember Purington.
And there's evidently 4 charging stations within a 10-mile radius of the center of Billings. So I don't know if 2, 3 in the downtown area to spread them out a little bit more. And I thought that some of the gas stations, the larger gas stations, had charging stations. Not positive, but I've seen them. Maybe not here.
Yeah, I don't know. The Bighorn Resort has Tesla superchargers. It's all a question of how long it takes to charge and they cost more depending on the speed. I don't know exactly about what else exists in the community, but it's a very small number. Any other comments, questions? Councilmember Ronning.
Thank you. This actually doesn't have anything to do with the consent agenda other than public comment, just to share with you, Mayor. So someone has posted on the live Community 7 Facebook feed that they have been trying to call the public comment line and no one's picking up. I actually just tried and it rang 4 times and went to voicemail also. So I'm not sure if something is still not working right, but just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Do you know, Councilmember Ronning, whether they tried the traditional number or the new number that we...
The new number.
The new number. Yeah, okay.
They posted it on the live Facebook feed, Community 7. So they tried the new number, and that's the number I tried also. Yeah.
Okay, Tony, or any of our administrators have any further information on that issue?
It appears that we are still having issues. I am in the office right now and I have not received any calls.
Chris,
so as we continue to work through that technical difficulty, I can tell you I did receive a text from a citizen out of state telling me they're perfectly able to watch, and they successfully texted me to let me know that that part of the system is working, but it doesn't do a lot of good if they can't call into the number. But the backup piece is working, but apparently the front end piece is still having some difficulty.
Okay. Well, we have the option to continue public comment via Chris's cell phone, I guess, which if council would like to do that, I'll make that announcement. But Councilmember Neese and then Councilmember Ronning.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, thank you. I think we tested earlier on before you got on that Kevin's phone worked as far as people calling him. I think we should give some opportunity for public to make comment. And so if we can have Community 7 and give out some new numbers for Community 7 to do that, and we can have some discussion internally until that gets out and we know it's out there so the public can actually comment.
Okay, we have not taken any action yet, so we'll hear what the other council members think before we make that announcement and figure out the details. Councilmember Ronning.
Thank you. Can we also suggest that if they're not able to get on live, they can also attempt to email us. And I know we're all at our computers. If they emailed council@billingsmt.gov, that should get to us fairly quickly as well. And then maybe Kevin or Tony or Chris could read those. Just a suggestion.
Okay, thank you. I know there is a bit of a delay. They don't on those emails, but Chris or Tony, if somebody sends an email to that address, will it be seen more or less immediately?
So, yeah, I know there is a bit of a delay. I don't think it's an extensive one. I would suggest probably the quickest way people can call in, if they could call my cell. I can put them on speaker and you can hear me. So I would suggest if someone wants to call in, we keep it as simple as dial into 406-581-7026. That's my cell. I'll put them on. It'll become problematic if too many people are in the queue, but at least that'll let people start. And we traditionally don't see that many calls. So I would think we should be okay.
Okay, without any objection, is there any objection to council to reopen public comment with Chris's phone number as the conduit? Does anybody object to that or want to comment further? Okay, I see some thumbs up and nobody objecting. And so that's what we'll do. We haven't taken any action tonight for anybody who might be tuning in. So this will be, we're going to reopen the opportunity for public comment on all items on our agenda tonight. It's item 1, our consent agenda with all the sub items. Or item number 2, the alley right-of-way in Luray subdivision and the possible vacating of that right-of-way. And then the possible purchase agreement in Elmer Fox Estates for expansion of the Billings Operations Center off South Billings Boulevard. If you would like to be heard, call our city administrator's cell phone number, which is again, area code 406, local number 581-7026. That number again, 581-7026. We'll delay here a little bit to give you an opportunity to call. That number again, 581-7026. There may be somebody ahead of you. Just be patient. Chris should be able to see that you're there. Just keep calling that until we've closed public comment.
So no calls have come through, Mayor. I have gotten a few texts from folks who are letting me know that they're listening and they're paying attention because they're giving feedback on some of the comments, particularly about the electric stations and their limited access and their appreciation for the discussion, but I don't have any calls yet. Oh, here we go. Hello, this is Chris. Now we got a couple.
Chris.
Yes.
Hi, Chris. This is Sonia Davis. I was just calling for public comment.
Okay, please, can you guys hear through my phone? Okay, it sounds like you can hear. If you can please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and we'll hear your comment.
Okay, hi. Good evening, everyone. That's what an eventful evening for this council meeting. But thank you for opening up for public comment. I think that's a really important part of this process.
Thank you. Could you be sure to say your name and address also, please?
And I'm sorry, if you could please say your name and address for the record and then give your comment. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. My name is...
Did we lose you?
So my name is Sonia Davis, and I'm at 341 Wyoming. And
I'm nervous.
So I wanted to address the council as a whole. And as you're discussing public safety matters and are having these discussions with your constituents in support or whatever about the public safety mill levy, I just want to express a general frustration about the way of thinking, this is the way we've always done it. I want to challenge you to just expand your mind, your thinking for a future. The last time I called in, I asked for you all to think about creative solutions when it comes to issues of public and what our ideas of the police are. And I want to reiterate that message. I see, this is going to be something that's in the forefront of the discussions that we're having as a community. And I do get frustrated when I hear, I hear a lot of bureaucratic talk as far as hands being tied. This is the way the charter is, so on and so forth. I just want you to challenge you to please examine your positions that we've elected you into and how you can use that power to address the concerns that your community and you can see the country as a whole is bringing forward. So that's it. Thank you for your service. I hope everyone continues to stay well and take care.
Thank you very much for your comments. So I did have several other people try to call in while that call was on. And so I've hung up to see if someone else will dial in. So unfortunately with the technology, you'll just need to call in one at a time. And here comes another one. Hello, this is Chris Kukulski, Billings City Administrator. If you could please give your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And this public comment is on agenda items, consent or otherwise. Later, we'll have non-agenda item public comment. So go ahead. Shoot here, let's. Hello? All right, they're not on speaker. Just 1 second here. Here we go. Are you still with us there, Mr. Zerbian?
Yes.
All right, you're on speaker now. Sorry, you weren't on speaker, so you couldn't hear me. They couldn't hear you. Go ahead.
Tom Zerbo at 1747 Wicks Lane. First, on the police, I hope we're not lowering our standards to get some racial, ethnic, sexual diversity in the police force. The chief always had a policy in the past. He didn't know the name, race, color, sex, religion, or anything of the candidate until they met his standards. I hope you don't lower that. I hope you keep the same high standards for getting police officers and not lower it just to get some ridiculous balance. We need the best, not just anything. Second, on bills and payroll. I've watched the city council for many years, almost 20 every week. I have never, ever seen this few of bills under bills and payroll. Did the city run out of checks? What's going on? How come you didn't pay any more bills? Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, if another call comes in, I'll figure out it's once they come in through multiples, then it's hard for me to hit speaker.
Okay, so, Chris, while we're waiting for any other calls, and let's finish public comment, but I'll ask you if you can comment on Tom's question. I also noted that it was unusual, but I know our finance administrator just was on vacation. Maybe that had something to do with it. So, but we don't have to answer that now. Do we have anybody else who's called your cell phone number?
If you'll be on the queue to answer that, I do have another call here. This is Chris Kukulski, Billings City Administrator. If you could please give your name and address for the record and keep your comments at 3 minutes or less on consent or on agenda items. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janny Kirk. I live at 4020 Rimrock Road. I'm one of the writers or helpers for the EV charging grant. I just wanted to comment quickly that if there are any questions, we're happy to answer questions. But to Pam's concern regarding the EV chargers around, most chargers in the city right now are private chargers. They're not accessible to the public 24/7. These chargers would be accessible to the public 24/7. So that was one thing that was stated. Anything else? We're pretty excited. It would be nice if Billings came into the 21st century in this regard. We appreciate your work on this, and we look forward to getting them installed. Thank you.
Thank you for your call. Okay, I'll give it just a couple seconds here. We don't have any calls coming in yet.
Just a reminder for anyone who's listening, the phone number tonight is not the usual number, but Chris's cell phone, which is local 406-581-7026. 581-7026.
Andy, you want to give a response to, since we ran out of coins, we stopped paying bills. Just kidding. Andy, can you comment about why we may have lower accounts payable right now?
Sure, Council, Mayor. I'll try to block my kids' toys out there. All right, I honestly, I don't know what the exact answer is. I suspect it's a couple of things. One, the June 30 paychecks or accounts payable is our largest, and so we don't do a check run at the beginning of July, because our end of our fiscal year, trying to tie up a lot of accounting entries. So that's one reason why it's small. Another reason is because our accounts payable clerk was quarantined due to a known exposure. And so we had some issues working around with her, trying to get her to work remotely. And I think we had some issues with some council memos getting to council. I believe that's been resolved. But I think those are probably the two reasons why there's such a small number this week.
Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it. I do have a caller on, Mayor. So if you could please give your name and address for the record, keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and pertaining to agenda items this evening. Later tonight, there'll be non-agenda item public comment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Kukulski. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you just fine. Go ahead.
I think particularly here. I'm going to go the other room, sorry.
Yeah, if you turn off whatever device is on, you're correct. We're tape delayed, and so it'll be confusing if you're still listening.
Thank you so much. I'll make this really quick. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, and Mr. Kukolski and staff. My name is Angela Cimino. I reside at 1745 Silver Lane in Billings Heights. And the purpose of my call tonight has to do with the Billings Operations Center land purchase at $2.1 million.
Okay, go ahead.
Is that in relation to the evidence building, or are we talking about a separate property altogether?
If you want to go ahead and make your comment, I'll be glad to then provide some information to the council in response to it.
Okay, thank you. That is my question. I appreciate your time, and thank you for your service, everybody.
Thank you for your service and thank you for your call. I'll leave you on speaker just so you can hear. So the property is adjacent to the Billings Operations Center to the south. So it's not the property that we have the evidence building going up on. It's across the street where the main 16-acre campus is. This 20 acres is contiguous to that.
And can I respond to that, sir?
Sure. Please keep it brief.
I promise I will. I'm just curious as to the timing of it, because I know that the city has had some financial challenges, and the fact that we're right in the midst of a special election asking the general public for more financial support for the public safety mill levy. This particular item obviously was budgeted, so that came from the general fund as well. Is that correct?
So it is incorrect. It was not budgeted for. We have been trying to buy the parcel for many, many years, and now it's for sale. So I'll leave it at that. I probably shouldn't have commented there, and I'll leave the council to take your public comment into consideration as they ask questions or make any decisions. Thank you for your call this evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye. Sorry. There we go.
Chris, did you have another caller?
I do not have any other callers at this point.
Okay, and just a reminder that purchase of property adjacent to the Operations Center is item number 3, and we will have opportunity for further council discussion on that item toward the end of the meeting. I think we've probably given everybody an opportunity to call in, and still, again, Chris, no additional callers on your number. Is that correct?
No, I would suggest maybe we end the public comment period thus far and move on.
Okay, thank you very much. We will close public comment, and again, express appreciation for Chris and your cell phone provider, and for the patience of the public in dealing with these technical challenges. With that, then we had a motion on the table, Councilmember Purington, seconded by Councilmember Bernice, for approval of item number 1, the consent agenda, without any separations. When we found out we had a problem with public comment, we went back and reopened public comment. So we are still addressing the motion that is on the table for approval. Do we have other questions or comments relevant to the motion? I have one for Wyeth Friday, our planning director. Wyeth, you still on with us? Yes, I see your picture there. Item number 1J is the subsequent minor plat for Midland subdivision. Two minor things. You might just check on the first page of the staff report. I think I referred to this as being a major plat, but it's 2 lots, and so it's definitely a minor plat. But that was just a typo, I believe. The other question, though, is, and I've asked this on others, are we still working on developing a system for calendaring when the waivers, the 20-year waivers for subdivision will expire? My concern is we'll just blow past those deadlines, and we need to have several years advance notice so that if we're going to initiate SIDs, that we do so within plenty of time. So can you just comment generally on the calendaring issue?
Councilmember or Mayor and Council, yeah, we have been working to figure out the best way to do that. I know in the past when we've had to go back and research through our system to look up, approvals and such, that it's complicated for that. So we're looking at that. It is still a challenge because it's 20 years in terms of how we do reminders, but we do have a system in place now with preliminary plats where we track their timeframes, when they're getting close to expiration after the 3-year period, and then we follow up with those applicants. So we're looking similarly, obviously this 20 years is further, but sort of modeling it that way. So we have ticklers to be able to remind us that we're coming up, maybe we've looked at like 5, at 15 or enough years of time that we can put that forward. And then I know we've also been in discussions with engineering on their side of it in terms of tracking it from that standpoint. So continuing, not perfect, but working on that. And again, like I said, that time frame is lengthy. It doesn't seem lengthy when you're talking about improvements, but it's lengthy when you're talking about trying to track. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll proceed to a vote on the motion, which is again for approval of all consent agenda items without any separations. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Voting in favor are all council members. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That then brings us to the regular agenda. Tony, if you're still with us, and it looks like you are, would you read item number 2?
Item number 2, resolution vacating the alley right-of-way adjacent to lots 1 through 6, Block 1, Luray subdivision. Propiedad LLC petitioner. Staff recommends approval. Action, approval or disapproval of staff recommendation.
Thank you very much. I believe Debbie Melling will be making the presentation here tonight. I'll turn it over to Debbie, assuming Chris doesn't have anything else. Okay. Chris does not. So Debbie, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you may recall, June 20th, we brought this to you for the first time, had the public hearing that evening, and then the council decided to table this item. So I have a really brief presentation, just kind of going through some of the same facts. And I need to share my screen. I'm not sure who can give me that permission.
I suspect that's Kevin, and he's probably
there. It is. He just did it. He's fast. All right. Is everyone seeing my screen okay, I assume?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. So as you recall, this property is located on Lincoln Lane, and you can see both the satellite view and then the plat that shows the lots. The dark line there is the alley vacation. And these are the same things I talked about before. The alley was actually dedicated with the plat of the Luray subdivision back in the 60s when it was in the county. And then in 2015, the unplatted property on the north side of the alley annexed into the city. That meant the alley and Lincoln Lane both annexed as well. At the time, the development plan by the developer was submitted last time, and basically they're talking about a storage facility. The valuation was presented at $2.18 per square foot. And with the total area that would be vacated, that's just over $10,000. And as I said, the item was delayed on the 22nd. So since we were here last talking about this, the petitioner did submit a new letter. And in that letter, they did commit to annexing the property on the south if they ever own it. As of now, the petitioner does not own any of the property to the south of the alley, but if they do purchase that property, they have committed to annexing that. We are putting together a development agreement, and that will be included in the development agreement, so it won't just be this letter we have, it'll actually be part of an agreement. Also, at this time, and we are recommending that if it's vacated, it's for the full cost of the right-of-way. And the reason behind that is there is a development agreement that was required back in 2015 when this was annexed. So the development agreement, when it is put together, it will come to council, and it will include the right-of-way on both Lincoln and, if applicable, Griffin. And it will include the south property annexation commitment to, if they purchase the south property, to annex it. And I just put a note here that this was all under the old process. Now you see development agreements at the time of annexation or shortly thereafter. A few years ago, the development agreements could be years afterwards. They came when the development happened. So we don't do that anymore. And the reason for that is exactly what you're seeing here. A lot of times we won't be able to track some of those development issues or the annexation issues that come up. So we did find in their annexation, they were required to do a development agreement. And in that development agreement, like I said, the right of way will be dedicated during that time. So we don't need to offset the cost of the vacation. So it, again, there's just two options at this point: either vacate it for full compensation, just over $10,000, or do not approve the vacation. And I can stop sharing my screen unless somebody wants to see any of the slides.
Thank you very much, Debbie. I assume you're open for questions. I'll start with one. First of all, we appreciate your continued work on this and clarification with the developer. The letter from the developer and the staff report talks about that development agreement, including a commitment that if the developer acquires the property to the south, that it would be annexed at that time. I guess I assume that the developer would not have any objection, and I would hope that we would require that covenant, that agreement run with the land. And not be personal to this particular developer, so that if the developer transferred the property, the same requirement would apply to the next owner. Any reason to think that that would be any sort of a problem here?
No, and our standard development agreements do have language about it running with the land. So when we bring that to you, you will be able to see the language that we put in there about that.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Yakovich.
Thank you, Honor and Council. I'd like to make a motion to approve the preliminary subsequent minor plat, and with that addition that you mentioned, Mayor.
Okay, just that would be clear and that requirement would run with the land. Councilmember Boyette, did you have a second? Okay, so the motion is for approval with that clear condition that the development agreement requirements run with the land. And motion by Councilmember Yakovich, second by Councilmember Boyette. Discussion now on the motion. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. And Debbie, I don't know if this is really something you can answer or not, but when we're talking about tying this developer up to this other land that he hasn't purchased yet, is that something that legally we can do? And maybe Brent is the best one to answer something like that. It seems to me like we're kind of tying that, making them commit to something that they haven't done. What happens if the deal that falls through, yet now this runs with the land? Is he still gonna be able to develop that land? And now we've got, we've given up the alley. I'm just not 100% sure how all the timing works on this to make sure that the city comes out the best.
If Brent would like to answer that. I mean, this is really unique. I've never seen a condition put on land that the person doesn't own. So we're putting a condition on somebody that they don't own the land yet. So it is a very unique condition. I've not seen it before. And as far as the legality, I'm going to have to let Brent answer that.
Councilmember Neese, it is unique. I don't think I've seen it in the 22 years I've been here. However, I think in terms of controlling development, I guess I don't see anything legally prohibitive of this as a condition. Certainly the mayor is a land use expert, or certainly very close to one, but I do not know of any impediment that would prevent us from doing that, particularly as long as the developer recognizes going into the development agreement what's going to be required of him and his successors in interest should he not pursue this.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's just a kind of a matter of contract. It's our right of way. And that's just kind of the deal that we're putting on it. And the restriction would not be on the property that he doesn't own. It's on restriction on the property he does own, at least technically, although it obviously would be relevant to this other property. Councilmember Ewald.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the reason all this came about is on this request to vacate right-of-way for the city of Billings. And it says petitioner's interest in vacating the public right-of-way to develop a dry storage facility that will be located on both areas currently separated by the alley right-of-way. So they kind of initiated this whole deal when they applied for the public right-of-way vacation. So we didn't bring it up, they brought it up. And because this is in the county, it just doesn't seem right that we leave that in the county when it's going to be using city services all the time. So.
Thank you very much. Further comment on the motion, Councilmember Bernice.
Thank you, Mayor. Debbie, another quick question, because we saw this at another location up in the Heights where they did dry storage. They weren't required to do a development agreement. They had open lot storage. They put up some fencing that was approved by planning, but for the most part, they didn't have to do that. So can we see, would we find that we're in the same predicament with this one, where if they decide to do just gravel lot storage, open storage like this, that we would not enter into a development agreement or require them to?
So the annexation that was done in 2015 carried a condition that they enter into a development agreement before development. Development would be any kind of development of that parcel. So they do need to enter into a development agreement.
Okay, so it's a little different than what we saw earlier up in the Heights on the little corner. Okay, thank you.
It is a condition based on the council action. So yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Other discussion on the motion? Is there any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll proceed to a vote on the motion. Seeing no other discussion, the motion again is for approval, consistent with the staff recommendation, with the clarification that the development agreement, when it comes back to us, clearly run with the land. In other words, bind successor transferees of the property, not just this particular developer, in case he were to transfer it or form a different company and transfer it to the company, for example. All in favor of the motion for approval, please raise your hand. Voting in favor are all city council members. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 3. Tony, could you read item number 3?
Item number 3, purchase agreement with Elmer Fox Estate for approximately 20 acres of land located at 6014 South Billings Boulevard for Billings Operations Center, $2.1 million.
Thank you very much. Is Jessica going to make the presentation on this, Chris?
Yeah, Mayor, Jessica Iverson, our facilities manager, she's going to make the presentation, and Kevin Ifland and I are both available, as well as Jessica afterwards for questions. So,
thank you very much. Jessica, welcome to the Brady Brunch. It's all yours.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will share my screen. So I'm here this evening to discuss an opportunity for an investment in the future of the Operations Center. There's a property just adjacent to the Operations Center that is currently for sale, and that is what we are presenting on this evening. So the Billings Operations Center is located on Midland Road and near South Billings Boulevard. It's a 16-acre complex that was built in 2004, and it serves multiple departments. We have the police, fleet motor pool, solid waste, streets and traffic, and parks, along with facilities. And we have several buildings, including administration offices, the fleet shop, the wash bays, garage with vehicle storage and shops, police barn, and the police evidence building, which we are nearing the completion of that expansion on that facility. As you can see, this photo here captures most all the complex and all except about just over 2 acres of our currently owned land has been developed. So there's very little space for expansion. So this is the subject property. It's located at 6014 South Billings Boulevard. It's approximately 20-acre parcel. It went for sale by the Elmer Fox Estate earlier this year with a $2.5 million asking price. It does have 3 primary structures on site. There's a house, a garage, and a shop building. It is in the county and it's ag zoning currently. It has 3 access points on South Billings Boulevard, Songbird Drive to the west, and then the Maggie Lane right-of-way, which would connect it to Midland Road. So acquiring this property, we've identified some advantages for acquiring the property. It would be an investment in the future of city operations. It would give us a space to expand our facilities out here. The subject property poses the greatest opportunity for expansion. And the developing adjacent to our current operations improves the efficiencies and saves the cost of developing elsewhere, where we would have to have new infrastructure and it'd be separate from the advantages of being on site here. So this is a review of our purchasing procedure. Last month, you approved the variance to resolution 93-16740, which allowed us to do these informal preliminary negotiations before we did the appraisal process. So far, we've done these informal negotiations with the seller. They have signed an agreement on their part to agree to the $2.1 million. Then we are to step 3, where we are presenting it to council tonight for approval. So if it's not approved tonight, we would follow your direction on how you would want us to proceed, whether to move forward on this property or not. If you do approve us to move forward on the buy-sell agreement, the city would sign it, and then we would have this contingent agreement where we'd move on to the inspection and appraisal process. We'd conduct the inspections and the appraisals. Then we would bring that information back to council again to talk about if the appraisals support that 2.1 million price of the agreement, or if it does not support the appraisal, or if the appraisal doesn't support that price, then we would figure out next steps from there. If council does approve it at that point, then we would finalize funding and then still present it back to council again for that final approval before closing on the property or actually going through the final purchase process. So some financial considerations for this property. As I mentioned, the price we agreed on is the 2.1 million. We would share closing costs. Our appraisals would need to support the purchase price to move forward. Based on our preliminary market research and considering some similar sold properties, we do believe the $2.1 million is a fair price for that property. The appraisal process that we'd have to go through based on that resolution I just mentioned is the 2 full appraisals, and then a third appraiser would review the 2 appraisals and determine an appraised price for the property. Additional cost considerations would be the appraisals, the inspections and investigation, building removal. We would plan to remove the house and the garage off the property if we did acquire it, and then the closing costs are estimated what we would have in additional to the purchase price for completing that transaction. So proposed funding. This funding to purchase this property was not in the fiscal year 21 budget because we were not aware that it would be available at this time. The property will be owned by facilities and financed through charges to the BOC tenants. Each division or department that benefits from the purchase of the property will contribute a proportionate amount based on their current area usage. Some divisions would be able to pay all or part of the cost upfront from their reserves, and then the remainder would be funded with general fund reserves. However, those expenses would be paid back to the general fund by the divisions through facilities charges in subsequent years, which we would figure out a payment schedule with each department or division. And that concludes my presentation, and I would welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for your great presentation, Jessica. Questions for Jessica or other staff members? Councilmember Ewalt, Purington, and Ronning. Councilmember Ewalt.
Thank you, Mayor. Jessica, does the BOC presently stretch the full length of that parcel?
Mayor and Council, Councilmember Ewalt, no, it does not. It's about half of that parcel.
So the long, narrow, is that the best use of the acreage, or would we have better use if we were more square and lined up with the BOC presently?
So Councilmember Ewalt, the property owners are interested in selling it all as one parcel. We would certainly consider sectioning it off if we don't need it. But I think for this process of getting this property, they would be more interested in selling the whole property at once.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Purington, then Ronnie.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. You did answer one of my questions that I had as far as how each department would divvy that up and pay for it. One of the other things I was wondering about on the expenses of, gosh, that's 80, what is it, $145,000 to get up to the point of paying then for the land. Is that, did I figure that up correctly?
Right. So that was part of the reason too, Councilmember Purington. That was part of the reason that we had asked for for this property, part of that variance to the resolution, is so that we can get sort of an idea of what we could get the property for, and then get your direction before we go ahead and expend the funds for doing the appraisals and all the investigations. But
Follow up, Mr. Mayor. Oh, sorry, Jessica. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Nope, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember.
So with the building removal, I don't know what kind of shape it is. In fact, we just drove by it yesterday. And would any of the buildings, garage or house, would those be able to be sold and moved off that maybe we wouldn't have to pay the total of the $50,000? Is that an option?
That, Councilmember Purington, that would be our first, we probably would try that first to see if someone would like the house and would like to move it off. The garage is probably beyond repair. We would remove that. The shop is actually in decent shape and could be used for storage purposes immediately. So.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilmember Ronning.
Thank you. This may be a question for you, Jessica, or perhaps you, Chris. So in regard to the departments that would potentially use that land and divide up the costs for paying for it, Chris, do you see any departments that are not currently out there near that property moving out there, or would this be specifically for the departments that are currently out there and expanding those? How do you actually see that happening in the future?
So, Councilmember Ronning, I'm not aware of, but I would not exclude the property from being used by other departments. So if there was some other division or department at the city that could benefit from using part of the land, and that benefit wouldn't negatively impact the standard users who are there, I think we'd be open to that. That conversation or that need has not come up yet. Now, Public Works is going through a facility master planning process right now. So maybe there's something I was missing. I mean, ultimately, I had expected that some of our utilities, water and sewer, would be on this site, but they are not. And it makes sense to me that they're, I mean, I could see that either way. I've worked in places where they're co-located there and other places where they're not. So, I'm not aware of someone else, other division or department, but we would not preclude another division or department if they needed and it would be beneficial to the city. Then we would absolutely have a conversation and they would reimburse based on their impact.
Councilmember Ronning, follow up?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mayor. Okay, so, and I asked that specifically, I guess, for two reasons. Considering the water treatment plant and the West End Reservoir, it seems like that would be a whole lot closer to that particular location than where Public Works is right now. So I was thinking wondering if that was possibly thought of in the future, but also do the departments, since this is the first time City Council has actually seen the presentation as well as the PowerPoint that Jessica just did. I mean, we're seeing this for the first time. So are the departments that are currently out there, are they financially prepared to pay this amount of money? I'm assuming that you're saying that they are, but I guess I just really want clarification. Are they financially set to pay this amount of money?
So a way I'd answer is a couple things. So not everyone's in a position to pay cash. So that's why, just like the BOC today, in fact, we still have a few more payments. I think ultimately it's paid off in right around 2024. We will put a payment schedule together that would work for a department or division who can't, and some others who want to pay cash will be able to do that. So I believe this will be a combination. I think, and without a doubt, this is it's completely unanticipated. I mean, I was told early on in my tenure that we've been looking at this site for years, trying to get it for obvious reasons, that it's the contiguous parcel, and the owners weren't interested in selling. In a perfect world, well, it's never perfect, right? Now the buyers now the owners want to sell, and we either have to take advantage of the opportunity or pass. And so that's what has catapulted this. I mean, no secret about it. It is being driven by the fact that we now have a willing seller of the contiguous property that runs along the entire south end of the property. So that's driving the timing. And I do believe we do have the reserve capacity. We get a bit paralyzed by our other issues, but we need to be able to take advantage and look at these capital investment opportunities when they come up. So that's why we are bringing it to you now, and believing, ultimately, I believe, though, we have our issues with operational expenses, particularly with public safety. We have capital needs for our city for decades going forward. And to me, I want one component of my legacy to be that we would be making decisions that make the future easier than the present or the past. And so buying this parcel, I think if we pass on it, we'll be missing an opportunity. But ultimately, you guys may say the timing just isn't good. We need to pass.
Thank you very much. Other questions for staff? Councilmember or a motion? Councilmember Neese and then Councilmember Yakovich.
Thank you, Mayor. Jessica, I didn't see a copy of the buy-sell. Is that something that we normally would not get? I would like to have read to see all the different terms of the buy-sell. You did explain some of it, but it kind of like the agreements and contracts we get with our memos. Is that something that you have available that you can share with us on that? And then I have another question, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Sure. Jessica?
Yes, I can. Yes, Councilmember Neese. Yes, I can certainly send that out.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, Mayor, thank you again. And Chris, I don't disagree with you that we need to look for the future and plan. And we don't pick when someone's going to sell property. But I guess, Jessica, and I'll ask you this question: in the buy-sell, is this standard? Are you considering, when I looked at that property from Google, if I did not visit it, but is it completely vacant? There was a lot of cars, automotive all over there. Is there still a lot of junk, and is there oil and spills and things like that we're going to maybe absorb some kind of, with whatever tanks on there, we're going to absorb some kind of EPA, dirty site? Do we know that?
So, Councilmember Neese, as part of the investigation in the next phase, we would have an environmental phase 1 study done to make sure that there are no contaminants, underground tanks that we're unaware of, things of that nature. Additionally, we did request that, obviously they clear the site of all personal possessions. So we would expect them to be removing all the vehicles, all the, any junk on the property besides the buildings. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Yakowicz.
Thank you, Honor. I know there's a lot of questions we have and great questions, but I'm going to make the motion that to approve the purchase agreement as recommended by staff.
Thank you very much. Oh, lots of seconds. Councilmember Shaw. Okay, the motion is for approval consistent with the staff recommendation. Now discussion on the motion. Councilmember Joy and then Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're sort of maybe not in the same position, but we're kind of in a position that a former council years ago had to make a decision about property that was downtown, and we're in a process of looking at how we can really solve some of our space needs in the downtown area for our departments there. And so we're kind of in that same spot. And I guess all councils sooner or later get in those have to make those tough decisions about whether they want to go forward on buying property. So I will support this motion. I think that opportunities for land are not always easy to come by. And I think that we will be expanding. It is certainly in an area where we have land that is available, and it's basically a green field. So I will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Boyette?
Yes, this land isn't for today. This is for our future. There's no reason not to go for the future 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. So this is a great deal. I think we need to get on it right away.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. I very much agree with what Council members Boyette and Joy said. My question, maybe I should have asked this before, but is just a very practical one as I'm explaining this to voters and people who are saying the same things as we had somebody just call in and ask us on public comment. How are you approving this when we know the city's budget is underwater? Would you clarify for me what will happen is basically 2.1 million comes out of the general fund? Is that a lump sum or is that more like a mortgage where it kind of happens over years?
So,
Chris, do you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. So our approach is to purchase it in lump sum using our general fund, or if there are any of the other components, so let's use solid waste as an example. They're one of the significant users out there that does happen to have cash. So we would not use, if we decided financially to make the recommendation to you guys to use cash, there'll be a combination. Solid waste money, some of the other departments, and the general fund. And then ultimately, the non-general fund components would be reimbursed over time. So I'll use general fund. Police is there, parks is there. You won't see a reimbursement from police and parks because there will be a general fund portion of the property. Does that make sense? Did I explain that okay? Sorry.
Chris, while we have you on that same topic, or Jessica, approximately what's the breakdown between the general fund departments and the enterprise departments for paying this cost? Streets, public works, our enterprise funds are not affected by our current cash crunch. Fleet is sort of a mixture because it's an internal fund. But do we know in very round numbers that breakdown?
Yes, we do. I'll have Jessica answer that, and then I'll just kind of caveat it. The approach is, she's going to tell you how we're currently using the site. If the actual future use is different, then we'll adjust accordingly in the future. Go ahead, Jessica.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So right now we're sitting about 30% of the site is used by general fund, which is police and parks are our two general fund tenants. And so then it's about 70% that are non-general fund. Fleet, we put in the non-general fund because they do generate money and they do have funds in their reserves that they would put toward this. So they're not really, obviously some money comes to them from general fund, but also a lot of money comes to them from non-general fund departments that they service. So really the numbers break down roughly to 30% police and parks and then 70% for the rest.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Sean or Councilmember Brown.
Either way works. So that 30 and 70 is not who's going to pay the $2 million. That's just what's being used right now. This is a general fund purchase, correct?
That is the way we're approaching it. Yes. Again, those who have cash, we're going to use the estimate based on our current usage. If they have cash available, then they'll pay cash, lowering our general fund need. Others, though, will have to borrow, so to speak, from the general fund and pay over time.
Okay. So follow up, Mayor?
Please.
So you're saying the Public Works is going to pay 70% of this $2 million right up front?
I actually wouldn't say that all of Public Works can pay their 70% up front. I would not anticipate, frankly, that maybe streets and some of the others won't need to pay it over a 3 or 5 year period. Andy, I don't know if you or Jessica want to add a little bit more detail to it, but those are part of the components we're going to dial in between now and as we make our way through that flow chart.
Okay, I'll wait to hear.
Okay, thank you very much. Other discussion on the motion, which is for approval. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to support this as well. I think we need to look to the future, but I have some concerns with the information we're getting, not seeing all the facts. There's a lot of questions here about where the money is coming from. We're trying to raise money for public safety, and now we're asking for $2.1 million. I don't know if this is going to be the final approval, but I think this is something we need to do. I'm assuming we're going to see a budget amendment for this 2.1 coming forward because some of these departments, they don't have the money. And we had a tough budget year as it was. And now we're going to throw 2.1 million spread out amongst all these different departments. It would have been nice to see a breakdown of how much and where you're going to take in what department. And then also, how are they going to do it? Because if we're charging it to solid waste or someone like that, that means we got to charge that through our fee structure somehow down the road. And so I don't know I'm not seeing where the plan is being presented to us to do this. But I do think it's important we grab the land that's now available. But I think this information here is really difficult to support to the public, that this is why we're doing it. And to Councilman Shaw's, how are we going to now justify this through as we're doing this public safety? But I will support this.
Thank you very much. Chris, you turned on your video. Maybe you wanted to be heard. I'm assuming we will get a little more information on those cost breakdowns. Very round numbers, I guess 30% of roughly $2 million would be about $600,000. If that were divided 50-50 between parks and police, that'd be about $300,000 each. Presumably they find in their budget over time, if you said 5 years, so 300 divided by 5, maybe $60,000 a year, something like that. You'll give us a better idea in the future. But Chris, you want to comment further?
I guess I asked and sorry, I'm kind of passing here, but between Jessica and Kevin, I know we've talked about those. So we know, again, I appreciate the roundness of it, but Jessica, could you give them a little bit more? The 70-30 is general fund versus non-general fund, but we know the rest of the breakup as it's used today. Could you touch on that?
Sure. So for police, I'll just start there. They have about 23% of the site. So then we're at about 6-7% for the parks when we're looking at that 30%. So parks has a much smaller footprint out here than police, obviously, with the police barn and the evidence facility. Solid waste, we have at about 39%, and streets at 27%, and then fleet at just over 5%.
So I just emphasize that's current usage of this site. I think the future usage will be somewhat different. I wouldn't expect it to be dramatically different, but roughly in those percentages, there's who ultimately will pay for it. So thinking big picture, whether it's cash or 3 years or over 5 years, roughly those percentages, those divisions would cover their share of the cost. And then if we learn down the road 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there's a different scenario, then one division will need to reimburse some other division that it ended up using a greater portion of the property on. So ultimately, we make those adjustments to keep it equitable and be sure that, you know, we cannot and would not spend street money on something that the street department didn't benefit from, and vice versa.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a reminder, our not discussion on the motion, Councilmember Treacy and Councilmember Ewald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no problem supporting this motion at this time, given the amount of information we have. We are not being asked to purchase this property tonight. We are being asked to support the staff in moving forward with the process of purchasing the property, which means getting the additional information about engineering and cleanup and the inspection and the specific details about how we're going to pay for it and whatnot. So yes, I fully support the staff moving forward with this and coming back with the details when we need to make the final decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Ewald.
Thank you, Mayor. Jessica, what percent earnest money are we going to have to put down to proceed farther that we will not be able to recoup if we decide against it?
Councilmember Ewald, the agreement is for $3,000 earnest money, and we do get it refunded if it doesn't go through.
If it doesn't go through, for what? Our choice or their choice?
Correct, for any of our contingencies. And we have contingencies for appraisals, we have contingency for inspections, and we have contingency for council approval.
Okay, and a follow-up, Mayor, please.
Go ahead.
So I think there's been a lot of talk that solid waste needs to expand. And I think the street department needs room for expansion also, don't they? So how far in the future are we looking? 5 years before any expansion?
Councilmember Ewald, the facility planning process is underway right now for Public Works. I don't believe there is any immediate. I don't think we'll see construction other than maybe clearing the site in the next couple of years. But I do believe long-term, all of those departments and divisions will need to expand. Long-term, nothing immediate, but I think long-term you will see the need for all of those departments to expand in some capacity.
So it's hopeful that this land will be paid off before that happens.
Yeah. In fact, I think we'll be done with our past purchase, the 2004 investment that was made to build this site and develop this site happens, I think, over the next 4 years. And so I think if you look out maybe as far as 5 in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll be all kind of full and clear on what's been invested from 2004 in the land purchase.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barani, then Councilmember Bernice.
Thank you. So I guess I just want to clarify what we are, if we do support this and move forward with it, that we are approving that staff enter into the buy-sell agreement, and that we are approving appraisals and inspection, the investigation of the cost, which could be around $30,000. We are approving the potential removal of the existing building, which is an estimated $50,000. We're approving those particular cost items. Is that correct? Is there anything more that we're approving tonight if we approve this?
Jessica, could you clarify specifically what this step is?
Yes, of course. Councilmember Ronning, this would be a contingent buy-sell. Then we would have the appraisal done and the inspections done. So that's that about $30,000. And that would be facilities funds to do that work. Then once we had that information, that's when we come back again. The appraisals are either going to support the purchase price or not. And then we'll have that discussion at that time. Maybe there's something concerning that we find from the environmental inspection or something else that, you know, the next time we talk about this property, we're still not making a final decision. We're just, the next step is to find out the information and then come back to you with that.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow up, Bill, Mayor, if I can. So it says in our memo that the fiscal effects also include the removal of existing buildings as an estimated $50,000. That's not part of what we're talking about right now. That's going to be something that you would come back and talk to us about. Did I just understand you correctly?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we wouldn't be removing anything until we owned the property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Ronning, just to clarify those comments, then my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jessica or Chris or Brant or anyone else, by this action, it's a little more than just instructing council or staff to go out and get more information. We are authorizing staff to enter into a binding legal obligation for the acquisition of the property with a buy-sell that we have not seen the specific terms of. So there's an element of faith there, but generally is described by staff. And very importantly, with the major contingencies about the appraisal contingency and environmental contingency and other standard contingencies would be included in that. I've got that right, correct? Jessica, Chris, Brent?
Yes, I think you have that correct. Yes, and so it is, I mean, in good faith effort, the expectation is that if the site comes out clean and the appraisals come out where we anticipate they will, we would follow through with this purchase. And then at those stages, as Councilmember Running pointed out, we wanted to show the total cost if everything goes through. And I would add, Jessica's negotiation with the seller did include them removing everything from the site or us. This price is lower than our offer would have been had they removed everything from the site. So that was absolutely a part of the consideration in securing what we think is a fair dollar amount for this investment. Okay, thank you very much. Jessica or Brent, anybody want to disagree with what Chris said or supplement that? Thumbs up from City Attorney Brent Brooks, I see. Okay, Councilmember Shaw, you had, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Neese, you had your hand up, and Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. And actually, my question is similar to what Councilwoman Ronning and you just discussed about what we're actually approving, because as I purchased land before, when I signed the purchase agreement, I'm locked in. If all the contingencies are met, if I back out, then it costs me a lot of money. And so there was some discussion saying that we were going to see this again for approval. So Jessica, you mentioned that this is contingent on council approval. Are there two council approvals, or is there just one council approval and this is it?
Councilmember Neese, so as part of that resolution that we discussed, or that you all discussed, Kevin presented last month, that had to do with the purchasing procedure, which does require that the council certifies, or I don't know, Brent, what the exact wording is, but the council has to set the market price. So you use those appraisals and the council still has to make a decision on that market price. We don't just take the appraisals as they are. That the appraisals actually come to council, and then council sets the market price for the property. So at that point, if you determine, no, the appraisals don't set the market price, if there's anything in the price or anything in the inspections that we're not comfortable with, you all can make the decision at that point to not move forward. And the costs that we would incur would be the cost for the appraisals and the cost for the inspections.
So quick follow-up, Mayor.
Go ahead.
So that's assuming the appraisal comes in for less than the purchase price. But if the if the appraisal comes in for more than the purchase price, then we've met all the conditions, and would it still have to come to council for approval, knowing that the appraisals are higher than the purchase price or purchase offer?
Councilmember Neese, that is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, and there I'll just comment about the need for being clear in the buy-sell about what our level of discretion is. Say the appraisals come back and say the property is worth $100 million because it's lined with gold. And they're all in agreement about that. And we struck a great deal. Is it still our discretion to say, nah, it's not worth it? We're not going to spend $2 million on this. I don't know how you're going to word that exactly, but I think what I'm hearing is a desire to have a lot of discretion by the council in that appraisal approval process. I don't know if that's been thought through, if we actually have language there, or anybody wants to comment further. But is it the case that the council will still have a lot of discretion on that approval process, the appraisal approval process?
So, Mayor and Council, Jessica, please correct me. And the risk, so if we say no tonight, we're done, we've spent time. If you say yes and we sign this agreement, we will spend roughly $30,000 on the inspections and the appraisals. You will be able to still back out of the sale, but you will have spent that money. If you say yes at that next step, so Councilmember Neese's question, this is not the final approval. You can absolutely say no later, then we will have spent the $30,000 and lost it. But again, it's a $2.1 million investment. So I think the risk of the 30, it's the reason we wanted the adjustment in the rules. The current rules say we had to spend the 30 before we could even have this conversation. We wanted to see if we could get a negotiated price we thought was fair, make sure we had a mechanism that this made sense, and then step forward. So you are in good faith if you say yes, intending to buy it based on the contingencies. But Jessica has done an excellent job providing mechanisms for you to get out and not really lose that much in comparison to the $2.1 million potential investment.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Brown and then Councilmember Tricky.
Yeah, I just kind of have a comment. This really kind of concerns me. I mean, we've gone through and made budget cuts and everything else for the fiscal year, and passed up on future planning things like Six Sigma. We've asked the police and the fire to cut their budgets, the parks to cut their budget, and we're still coming up short. So now we're going to make another general fund purchase of $2 million. And we don't even know if we've got the $4 million for the public safety levy. We're just digging a hole. I'm not disagreeing that this is an opportunity we would love to take advantage of, but budgets are budgets. And I think that we need to really keep that in mind here. If we were already past the public safety levy vote and it went through, I don't think I'd have a whole lot of agitation here. This really concerns me that we're just digging a deeper hole. That's all I got, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Tricky.
I just wanted to say that to comment. Historically, the reason why appraisals got put into processes like this was to make sure that city councils like ourselves and other legislative bodies did not give sweetheart deals to their buddies. So, so we're making sure that that property is not actually only worth $1 million instead of the 2 or 2.5 or whatever it is that we were negotiating at. So it isn't, the appraisal is not intended to set the price, although structurally that's kind of what's happened over the years. And that's why we were asked to change the process this time around. So just want you to remind that we're not, the appraisal is not in and of itself going to set the price. It's making sure that we're not spending tax dollars and giving our buddies sweetheart deals.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Purington.
Chris, whenever we talked about that CARES money that came through, and we talked about using it for capital improvements. So would this be an opportunity to use that money for, instead of general fund reserves, for the police portion of it? Because I think police, that CARES money probably has to be used for public safety expenses.
So, Councilmember Purington, I will tell you, in conversations with the other mayors and city managers, everyone appears to be looking at this in a similar fashion, which is, remember, the CARES amounts are based on a reimbursement to each city and town in Montana based on their payroll expenses for police, fire, and dispatch. Every city in the state had budgeted those funds. The net effect is it has freed up dollars in their budgets. And people are trying to focus on capital investments. I think the closer we keep the money expenditure to public safety, the better we are with the legislature going forward. But ultimately, the rules are you have the flexibility. I think we need to get through our public safety levy so we stop being paralyzed by this fact that we're not covering our operational expenses. That's what's crippling us. To answer your question, yes, the money could be used, and other cities are using it or intend to use it for things not related to police, fire, or dispatch, and they can, because it's a reimbursement for payroll expenses, and everybody's had the payroll expenses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Ewald, and just a reminder, we need to move to a vote at some point. Councilmember Ewald.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a definite time element to getting this done, or do we have a little flexibility to stall for just a little bit, or what?
So, Mayor and Council, the process takes time. So the appraisals themselves, I believe we're being told, won't be available, won't be completed for roughly 60 days. Am I right there, Jessica? Can you talk about that timeline? 60 days to 3 months, 2 to 3 months. So we're going to be past the public safety vote by the time we get to actually a decision here on the purchase. But today, I don't believe the sellers. If I was the seller, I wouldn't just sit here and say, okay, go ahead and let me know in 6 weeks if you'll sign the buy sell. I think we should move forward, but hopefully that answers your question, Councilmember Ewald.
Thank you very much. The only thing I'll comment there, Chris, is it may also take some time to finalize this buy-sell agreement. Jessica earlier said that a copy would be sent in response to Councilmember Neese's question to him, and I'm assuming other council members will be copied. That would be great. And if it were not signed by our next business meeting, I guess we could make a motion for reconsideration in the unlikely event that, this passed and people wanted to reconsider. But it is a little bit difficult giving staff approval to sign a contract we haven't seen. In the future, I would hope that maybe we could have that agreement in front of us. So, but if we can see that out or see that document as negotiations on it are completed, if they haven't been already, that would be great. There was another hand up, I believe. Who did I miss? Was there anybody else who had discussion on the motion before we move to a vote? I'm not seeing. Chris.
Mayor, I apologize. I think, though, you brought up a question that I don't want there to be any confusion on. If the council wants to wait to see the agreement, then we should give you the agreement and you should make the decision, I think, 2 weeks from tonight or at our next meeting. If you're okay with what we've shared with you about the agreement, you should approve it tonight. I think it's dangerous to approve it tonight with the notion that maybe we'll reconsider it next week or the week after. In hindsight, the agreement should have been included in the packet material. That was a mistake on my part that it wasn't attached. So if the council wants to wait, I'll need Jessica to help me understand what kind of problems I'm causing here, but I would rather there be clarity for you guys in the seller and the staff than us wondering if something's going to change next week.
Understood. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make it clear that my concern is not seeing that buy-sell. I have no problem with the buy-sell. We've done many buy-sells through the city in the past. I'm not concerned about that. I'm literally just concerned about budget and money. If this was just down the road a few more weeks, it really wouldn't be a huge issue for me, but I'm just really struggling with it right now.
Okay, understand. Thank you very much, Council Members Ronning and then Neese.
Thank you. I'm in 100% agreement with Sean. I have a real big issue with this as well. If it were presented to us down the road after the public safety mill levy, I would feel a little bit more confident about that also. But I feel the exact same way, is that we've received presentations that we're spending more than the revenues that we've got. And I have real big concerns about that as well. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Neese.
I guess I would ask the council members if, and that's where I have a trouble with not seeing the finance and how it's going to be financed. And although I think this is a great idea, I think we'll have a time to vote it against it if we had to, or like the mayor said, we can reconsider. But I guess we could also, Sean or Penny, if you vote to postpone it, we can always do that as well. But I would have liked to have seen how it's going to be paid. It's going to make it a lot easier to explain to the public when we're talking about public safety and education. If we don't, but now we really don't know how is it going to be paid. Well, we're going to take it from general, but we don't have enough money in general today, so I don't know how we're going to explain it at the same time we're doing public safety. I would prefer to delay on this until we can really understand the funding of this and how we're expecting the funding of it. I would have liked to see the buy-sell, but like Sean said, we do a lot of buy-sells, but it would have been good information to have so we can support it. But I do support the purchase of the property. I think we got to think to the future, but there's a lot of unanswered questions on the funding.
Okay, I'm going to ask staff to comment further there, but just to clarify, although the money, as I understand it, would be fronted by the general fund, about $2 million, our reserves are far in excess of those dollars, especially with the CARES Act coming in. So I'd be surprised if there was any sort of true cash flow problem. The larger question in my mind is those general fund departments, police and parks, which amount for about 30% of the $2 million, or about $600,000. How will they pay back their share over time? It's not a huge amount, but with those CARES Act dollars for police, if it frees up money, I can see that it might not be a difficult challenge. The chief is not on our call anymore to express any concern over his ability to pay back his share. But Chris, can you comment further on the payment mechanism?
So, Mayor, I think you've nailed it. Big picture policy. Roughly 1/3 of this is going to be paid by the general fund. 2/3 is going to be paid by the other enterprise funds, no matter which way you slice it. Unless the usage 5, 10, 20 years from now dramatically changes, about 600 is going to come from general fund. The rest is going to come from the other funds. And we don't have a cash flow problem. We have an operational cost problem. So I think I think from a policy standpoint, if you're not comfortable with $600,000 plus or minus being spent by the general fund, then you've got the information you need to understand ultimately who's paying for this. We've given you the breakdown. I apologize, it wasn't in writing in the memo, but the breakdown of how it's going to be funded at the front end is based on current usage of the site. Long term, it'll be reimbursed by the actual usage, and no one will be able to tell you that with certainty until it's actually fully utilized decades into the future.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember.
If I could add one other piece, there's not a reimbursement to the general fund from the general fund. I'd use the cash from the general fund reserve, and the general fund's done. The general fund doesn't have a long-term liability. It's paid it.
Okay, but it will decrease our available reserves by about 30% of $2 million, or roughly $600,000, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. South Billings TIF was very generous to help us with the police evidence building. Taxpayers have been investing in public safety. Taxpayers of South Billings have been investing in public safety. They have done a very good job of doing that. So I would just like to say, South Billings is really pulling its weight in terms of its investment for police and safety. So that's a big benefit. And this is another thing where the tough decision is going to come down to this council. But there has been investment in public safety by taxpayers in South Billings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Brown.
Okay, Chris, I'm really dense here and I apologize. So this reimbursement or purchase from the other departments, is that immediate or is that 10 years down the road?
What in Andy and Jessica, please help me here. I've been saying longest it would stretch out would be 3 to 5 years. Am I off? I would think that Councilmember Brown, if a division or department has the cash available, they just pay it and they're done. If they don't, then I would think we're a 3 to 5 year kind of a process, but maybe I've grossly underestimated that time frame. Jessica, can you talk about anything you've considered, or Andy, if you want to weigh in there?
Sure. So Councilmember Brown, right now, Chris mentioned it earlier, but right now we have about 4 debt payments left on the BOC, including fiscal year 21. So we collect about $530,000 a year from the departments out here, minus solid waste, because they paid their portion of BOC upfront back in 2004. But with those debt service payments, the idea would be, worst case scenario, we extend those a few years past the 4 years. Everyone has it in their budget now to pay those debt service every year. So we would extend that, however long we needed to maybe 2 more fiscal years to pay that money back into the general fund.
Okay, so to clarify, the $600,000 that public safety is going to pay is down the road. Right today, we're paying $2.1 million out of general fund, and then it'll be reimbursed over time. Correct?
Yes, I think the only confusion there, though, Councilmember Brown, is we don't need to loan the general fund, which is where police and parks is. So they'll have theirs done and paid off.
Right. The 600,000's done.
Yeah.
But we're carrying the public safety, or I'm sorry, the general fund then carries the others until they reimburse it.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, guys. I appreciate your patience.
Oh, very helpful. Thank you, Councilmember Ronnie.
Thank you. And Chris, just to clarify for the public, because I don't think we've said it, or maybe we haven't, and I was zoning out at the time, but just to clarify, so with any public safety mill levy, with the current public safety mill levy and with the public safety mill levy that will have to go for in 2021 or 2022, but the current one right now, the money for that public safety mill levy, none of that will go toward purchasing land, correct? All of that is going to go toward public services and public service safety that the public's expecting. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. That is correct. No dollars if the voters say yes, and 60 mills generates 12.2 plus million. None of those dollars are being spent here. Those dollars are all will continue and will backfill the hole we have today of around 4.7 million in public safety spending over revenues.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Last thing I could request, along with the copy of the buy-sell, can we get a copy of what this finance plan is and how the funds are going to be moved from one department to the other, or borrowed, paid back, so we can kind of help explain this a little bit to the public?
So absolutely, Councilmember Neese, the intent here, we will send you the buy-sell at the latest in the morning. Maybe it's already been sent to you now, I'm not sure. The finance piece, I know beyond this general term, was going to be included in the next step. If you want us to outline that sooner than that, I could put it in a weekly or something like that, but it would be defined in the next step of the process.
Okay, that's fine. I just mentioned a couple of things about how they're currently paying $500,000 a year now. It does make sense over 4 years. You're almost at 2.2 million, and it's paid for. So those are the kind of things that if we can have some kind of rough sketch, yeah, it could change, but some kind of rough sketch and idea of how you're going to pay for it, that would be fine. Where it's not using, not going to affect the general fund, not going to affect this public safety mill levy we're going after, things like that. Something that we can have before the next step so that when questions come, we can answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Ewald.
Thank you, Mayor. Jessica, could you tell me exactly how much, if we go to the next step, we're going to have invested in it, in the discussions, the appraisal, and I think there was 10,000 for something. What was it 10,000 for?
Councilmember Ewald, so the 10,000 is for the appraisal process. I got quotes from appraisers that each appraisal would be $4,000, and then the review appraisal would be $2,000. So that gets us 4 plus 4 plus 2 gets us to the $10,000.
So what's the 20,000 then?
The 20,000 is our site investigation. So we would do that phase 1 environmental. We would do a soils investigation, make sure there's nothing with the soils in terms of future buildings that would be an issue. And then doing a survey of the property to make sure we have all the property lines correct.
And then we have 3,000 earnest money.
Correct.
So we got 33,000 total. Do the appraisals and the inspections have to run simultaneously, or can the appraisals be done first to find out if it's a good deal or not, and then do the inspections afterwards?
So Councilmember Ewald, we could do it either way. Ideally, we'd have the inspections done first so that if we knew there was a big issue, it might affect the appraised price of that property.
All right, and then one more question, Mayor, for Chris. Where does this 33,000 come from if we decide we're gonna not do it?
Where's the 33 come from if you decide to do it?
To not do it.
Well, if we're not going to do it, or
we're gonna owe somebody $33,000 if we decide against it when it comes back to us.
The money we're spending is out of our facilities budget. So out of our facilities budget, that's where we'll spend the 33 to do this work.
So does that mean everybody that's at the BOC shares in the 33,000, or does everybody in the whole city share in the 33,000?
I'll need accounting to kind of help me there, Jessica, as to how the details of that works.
So we would use the facilities budget for the BOC. We have separate accounts for BOC and for City Hall. So the City Hall or the BOC facilities budget, we do have money available in public facilities and investment type projects. So that's probably where we would take the money from to use it, since we do consider this an investment in public property. And then it would just be 30,000 that couldn't be used on another project, or we do have some money in reserves that we could pull out of.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Brown. Councilmember Brown, you are muted.
Sorry. I just have a final comment. I don't want to jack this property owner around and try to drag this out and, do all that kind of stuff. I really don't. I'd love to be able to go to him and say, look, if our levy passes, man, we're on board. But I would just caution everybody, let's not try to figure out ways to stretch this out before we make a decision. We're either for it or not. And that's my comment. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Are we prepared to vote? I see some nodding heads, so we'll move ahead with a vote. The motion again is for approval, consistent with the staff recommendation, authorizing staff to proceed with the buy-sell with those contingencies. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Voting in favor, Council members Cole, Purington, Boyette, Yakowicz, Joy, Ewalt, Shaw, Tricky, and Neese. Please raise your hand if you're voting in opposition. Voting in opposition, Council members Brown and Ronning. Thank you very much. Motion passes. We'll proceed and look forward to updates from staff as they move along. It's 8:02. We're now done with our regular agenda. The only thing remaining on our agenda is public comment on non-agenda items and council initiatives. So I propose to skip our break and just wrap up. I see some thumbs up, so that's what we'll do. This is public comment on non-agenda items. A reminder for anybody who's watching, I assume we still need to use Chris's cell phone.
We have gotten Denise Bowman's phone to work. So the number is 657-8210.
Okay.
And we do have a caller in queue already.
We do already. Okay, that's great. And that number is the clerk's number again, 657-8210. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. We'll need your name and address, and there is a delay, so turn off your television or computer. Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you for calling the City Clerk's office for public comment for City Council. Can you please state your name and number? I'm sorry, name and address?
Kevin Nelson, 4235 Bruce Avenue.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
So some of you may not have been on the council, but I think it was, maybe it was last year, heck, maybe been the year before. But this council took it upon themselves to hire a professional consultant, and you guys agreed, at least the council that was present agreed, that the noise level in this town was too high. And we had comments from Councilman Ronning. She had some initiative. She says, take it to the track. They didn't take it anywhere. They just took it right into town. They haven't left. It is just appalling that we have to be bombarded by these motor vehicles that just think it's just all right just to rip their exhaust off completely and rip through this town day and night. And when these are all offenses by law, we have laws against all of this, but there's just no enforcement. There's no temptation to begin to enforce it. These people just trespass their noise upon our private property. Our quality of life is diminished. A perfect example of these people have no respect for anybody else. How many of these, go look at these motorcycles. These guys put their helmets on, put their earbuds in. They get to listen to music or whatever they want to listen to, but we get to listen to their noise while they rip through town. And we don't do anything. And the laws are crystal clear about this, but there's just absolutely no enforcement. And I wish I wish we would see some enforcement on this. And I think we can just do better with just some enforcement. And I think it's a lame excuse for Rich St. John, which will probably stand up and go, well, we don't have time, we don't have this. There's always some lame excuse why something can't be simply enforced. And I would suggest that you just start by, if you just went to the worst of the abusers, social media would bring a bunch of them into compliance if they just found out that, hey, my friend got busted and here was the consequence. there might just be some natural enforcement or some natural obedience of the law just because they don't want to be next. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I did have another call, but this phone system will not allow us to queue a call. So if we could wait just a moment to see if the caller calls back.
Thank you, Tony. So that number is 657-8210. If you'd like to be heard, please call. But as you might have heard Tony say, if you call and there's somebody else on the line, I'm not sure what happens. You'll either get a busy line or go to voicemail. So bear with us. Just keep calling that number if you're having any problems. Chris Kukulski's cell phone is also available. If you've got problems or comments, that number 581-7026.
Thank you for calling the city clerk's office for the city council meeting. Please state your name and address.
Tom McKinney. Address 2324 Green Valley Drive.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yes, I was watching TV the other day and I saw the alert for armed and dangerous men in Yellowstone County come across the screen, which alarmed me considerably. I was talking afterwards to several people, and this has to do with the armed person in Alkali Creek area. But I was talking afterwards to several people to see if the city employees were notified of this armed and dangerous person, because some of the bus routes go out that way, and I was wondering if they were informed that there was armed and dangerous person in that area. I was told they weren't. I don't know if that's a true statement or not, but I'd like to get some feedback on what the process is for notifying city employees that could possibly avert a dangerous situation. That's all I have.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much. And we'll complete our public comment. But if Chris or Kevin Iflin has information that we can pass along on that question when we're done, that would be great. If not, we can get that information to the caller later. Tony, do we have anybody else who has called 657-8210? 657-8210.
I did not receive any other calls.
Okay, maybe while we're waiting, and we won't close the public comment quite yet, but I don't know if Chris or Kevin Eflin have any information about the shooter situation and getting that information to bus drivers or any other city employees who might be in the area.
So Mayor Cole and Council, outside of there was an area of town using our new system or newer system that did notify folks. I don't know how that equates to employees. I would assume if they don't have addresses or phone numbers in that area, unless it's smart enough to know if they were literally in the area at the time. So Kevin, do you know any more details of how the system works?
Yeah, the code red system, I don't think would notify like our Met bus drivers, things of that nature. And I'd have to say that it probably is an area that we need to work on. I know that officers have requested in the past through dispatch, notify certain people or notify this or that. But as far as it going out to all the Met bus drivers, things like that is something we probably need to work on.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a great suggestion by that caller, and if we could look into that, I'm sure everybody would appreciate it. Tony, I'm going to close public comment if we have no other callers.
I do not have any more callers.
Okay, thank you very much. And public comment on non-agenda items is closed. Are there any council initiatives this evening? Seeing none, that bring us to the end of our meeting. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, members of the public, for your patience with our technical challenges. Hopefully, we'll work on that for the next meeting. Live and learn, and we're adjourned. Have a good evening.
which is insane fast. She was naturally talented at it. That was 1932. By 1939, she'd won every major aviation award in the country. Her friends included Hap Arnold, she'd met by this point.